Yiddishkeit. 1 million kids under 18 that are Yiddish, Jewish kids, don't know anything about Yiddishkeit. So if you live in an area and there's a kid down the block who doesn't know anything about Yiddishkeit, don't be marachakim. Bring him to Ovis Avadim. Help him learn. Be makar of him. That's part of an achrayus. That's called Kol Yisrael Arevim. Don't just feel I'm better than him because I'm going to yeshiva, to Paris, or to Asmini, wherever you go. Don't just feel that way. Have rachmanis on a child like that. And try to bring a child like that into Yiddishkeit. That's called Kol Yisrael Arevim. Tell you something very interesting. The Duvna Maggid once had a mashal. He once said that there was a father who had 2 sons. One was very rich and one was very poor. And they both lived in a foreign country. So he said to the sons, he wrote them a letter, he said, listen, your sister's getting married. I want you to come, both of you to come from far away. And all the money you spend in my honor, I'm going to pay you back. So the wealthy son, he goes to all the stores and he buys all the fancy clothes for him and his wife and his kids. And he comes to the chasana. And the poor guy, the schlepper, all torn out with clothes, has nothing, all patches on his clothes from the 1920s, and his wife is all, she doesn't have any nice clothes, and the kids, they come to this and Shishtach and Zahab, and they come off the plane, and Mechutton sees these schleppers, Nebach. He says, well, who are these people? She says, oh, that's my son. Oh, he said, I thought the wealthy one was your son. Yeah, I have 2, in every family, Machzah Chazayim. So the father was so embarrassed, okay? Have the chassan, the shel brachos, and they're both ready to go back. So the rich guy comes in to the father, he says, Dad, I'm ready to go back. So the father says, look, goodbye, Gay, you the hate. He says, what do you mean? What do you mean, Gay, you the? You know how much it cost me to come here? He says, so what's got to do with me? He says, you wrote me a letter. Remember you wrote me a letter that all the money that I spend, you're going to pay me back? He says, bring me the letter. What did I write? All the money that you spend in my honor, I'll pay you back. You spend money in my honor? You spend money in your honor. If you were worried about my honor, you'd make sure your brother didn't look like that. That was a bezoya to me. You weren't worried about my honor. You were worried about your covet. So the Duvna Maggid says, we just davened in a volatility. Baruch Hu Elokeinu. The Eidah says, Gebench, Shebara'anu. He created all of us, l'chvayday. You think just because you come to learn, so it's a college for Hashem, what about the other Yidden down the block who don't know anything? They're also Yidden. Shebara'anu, we're all created, all of Klal Yisrael. What about all those other kids on the block who don't know anything? And fathers have to know in business, they see a Yid, the guy doesn't know anything, he's not wearing a yarmulke, no tzitzis, no nothing. It's an achrayus. We're all in it together. I was just by a gadol in Eretz Yisrael, and he said to me, what do you think the Eibishter has? If somebody learns Torah, he puts it from his right pocket to his left pocket. What you got to do also, of course you have to learn, but you have to feel an achrayus for those that have less. I'll tell you something, an amazing story. It's one of the greatest stories I ever heard. It happened a few months ago in New York, in Baltimore. In Baltimore, there's a big shul, the Agudas Yisrael shul. So you have 2 people who lay in every Shabbos. They switch off. One is Rabbi Jeravel, and the other is a certain Balabos, Mr. Izzy Strauss. So it happens one Friday night, Pashas HaYigash, it just happened. Again, it's going to be Mitzvah Hashem in the new book. And what happens is, he has a horse throat, and he can't lay. So what's he going to do? So he takes hot tea, he takes hard candies to see maybe he can fix up his voice. So tomorrow morning he'll be able to lay. Comes to Shul Shabbos morning, he can't get a word out of his mouth. So he goes over to the other Balabos, he says, Mr. Strauss, maybe you could lay for me today? You see, I can't lay. He says, okay, bring me a ticket and I'll look it over. Comes time to lay, and all of a sudden, Rabbi Jeravel gets up to lay. And he's stressing his voice, straining his voice. You can hardly hear him, but they hear him till Shani. And then after Shani, he gets down and the other guy takes over. Mr. Strauss takes over to lay. So after davening, the Gabbai goes over to Rabbi Jeravel. He says to him, you saw you couldn't lay. Why did you get up to lay? Listen to what he said. Listen to this genius. He said, most people, they don't keep a cheshbon. They don't know who's supposed to lay this week. I lay this week. The other guy lays this week. They don't know. So imagine if Mr. Strauss would have got up to lay. And he would have made a few mistakes. People would say, he didn't prepare to lay. But now that they see that it's really my turn to lay, except that I can't lay, so he's taking over for me. If he makes a couple mistakes, it's not his fault. He just took over for me. That's genius. That's chesed. That's concern for another person, to make sure that another person shouldn't have comments that are said against him. There's a very famous word that we all know. Achzor. What does achzor mean? An achzor means somebody who's stingy, somebody who's nasty. You know what the pasuk in Eve says? Eve, you test your gimel. Eve complained, Achai, my brothers, may all I hear, they have furthered themselves away from me. V'yodai ach zoru mimeni. They are strangers. The word achzor comes from the word, when you look at somebody, achzor. He's only a stranger. Nobody, no Yid is a stranger. You know what the word tzibur stands for? Tzadikim, beinanim, virishoyim. That's all the tzibur. If somebody's a Rasha, you have to rachmanis on him. He didn't have the parents you have. He didn't have the yeshiva you have. He didn't have the friends and background that you have. Part of feeling an arvus, Kol Yisrael Arevim, is to feel an achrayus for other people. So I just want to tell you something that we can all do. I don't have enough to go around for all of you. But I think that the Rebbes and the parents can take a book like this, and you don't have to take a book, obviously this book, but you can take any book. Write down a chesed every day that you do for another person. Don't write down 10, because you'll stop it for 2 days. But from now, at least till Tisha B'Av, or at least till Elul, maybe till Rosh Hashanah. And once you get into it, you'll see you won't want to stop. You'll become a different person. Every day, write down a chesed that you did for somebody else. And husbands and wives, that what you do for each other doesn't count. That you have to do if you know what's good for you. But I'm talking about other people outside the house. Outside the house. Do a chesed for somebody else. And then the Eivish, Hashem Tzilcha, the Eivish is your shadow. You'll see that Hashem will begin doing chesed for you. You want to feel an achrayus to Klal Yisrael? I remember I once saw a great word, an English word. The word team, T-E-A-M, you know what it really stands for? Where did the word come from? I saw something gewaldig. Team stands for together, everyone accomplishes more. Isn't that hafladik? Team, that's what a team is. That's what a school is all about. That's what a yeshiva is all about. That's what a family is all about. That's what a community is all about. Together, everyone accomplishes more. And that works when people feel an achrayus. I just want to end with this thought. You know, it says in Pasuk, in Shir HaShirim, Perek Beis, Pasuk Yudalet. David says to Klal Yisrael, Harini es manayach, let me see your face. Hashmini es koilech, let me hear your voice. Ki koilech orev, because your voice is sweet. Orev means sweet. Kol Yisrael Arevim can mean also every Yid is sweet. Every Yid will feel an achrayus, a responsibility. But Orev, Ayin, Reish Beis, can also be read as Erev. Erev is evening. Erev is dark, is night. Some person could say, Kol Yisrael Arevim, who has time? It's like night, it's dark, it's a bother. So how should we touch Kol Yisrael Arevim? The Ayin Reish Beis, which is a reference to sweetness, that's how I want to feel towards another Yid? Or Kol Yisrael Arevim from the word Erev, which means it's dark, it's bothersome, I don't want to get involved. We're coming now of Elul, soon comes Rosh Hashanah, and right before you blow shofar, we all cry out to Hashem, Aroiv Abducha L'Toiv. Hashem, be our guarantor, feel a responsibility to us. Al Yashkuni Zaydin. Don't let bad people exploit us. We want Hashem to be our Orei, to take care of us. So we from today on, from this kinos in Chaverim, we have to act in such a way that Kol Yisrael Arevim is sweet, because that's what we want Hashem to take care of us. So let us try. Children will inspire fathers. Fathers will inspire children. When Rabbi Davidson told me the name of the organization, I thought, Mitzvah Hashem, when I get back to America, I'm going to start such an organization. Or else, at least, as an organization that exists, I'm going to use the name Ovos Abonim. What a beautiful name. You know why it's beautiful? Because that's Mashiach's Zeiten. At the end of Malachi, the Pasuk tells us, V'heishiv leiv Ovos Abonim v'leiv bonim al avoisam. And Rashi says, Al Yedei bonim. Because the parents will see all these sweet children here, coming and learning and davening. And it's going to be an inspiration for the parents. Don't think you kids don't have an inspiration on your parents. You definitely do. I know for myself, I speak less Lashon Hara today than I did when I was a young boy. Why? Because my kids, all involved with Shmiras HaLashon, they're much more careful than the previous generation was. So Mamela has an ashpah. So parents have an ashpah on children, and children have an ashpah on parents. That's the basis and the emphasis of this great organization. And that's why, even though that I've spoken already close to 15 times since I'm here, and I'm only here in England 3 days, but this was an organization that I didn't want to miss. Because to get up early and to have fathers learning with children, that's the future, that's the guarantor, that's the future of Klal Yisrael. David should say, help Rabbi Davidson and all of you together, fathers and children and mothers, fathers and mothers and children, all together. You should be zeicha to feel an achrayus and an arvis one to each other and an arvis for all Yidden, so that we should be ba'aguda achas and see Mashiach in our time. Thank you for inviting me and thank you for listening.